In late September 2025, Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo, flags. They chanted slogans demanding the government take responsibility for ongoing power outages, lack of clean water, soaring prices, and the worsening living conditions of ordinary citizens. Black smoke rose from burning piles in the streets as riot police lined up in front of government buildings. The anger that erupted stemmed from long-ignored problems that had accumulated over many years. Madagascar's electricity and water supply systems had fallen into severe disrepair. According to an Al Jazeera report on May 25, 2025, many districts in the capital experienced rolling blackouts lasting dozens of hours, while people queued for hours to collect a few buckets of water for daily use. Poor households could not afford generators, while hospitals and schools were forced to shut down due to energy shortages. Dissatisfaction spread rapidly, particularly among the youth. The Gen Z generation of Madagascar, accustomed to social media and global social justice movements, became the driving force behind the protests. They shared images, videos, and posts urging people to take to the streets against government negligence. Freaka News reported that the movement quickly spread beyond Antananarivo to cities like Toamasina, Fianarantsoa, and Mahajanga within days. The government responded with repression. President Henry Rajoelina signed an executive order imposing a nighttime curfew and deployed police and gendarmerie nationwide. ABC News reported that clashes broke out as protesters refused to disperse. Tear gas was fired, shops were looted, cars were set on fire, leaving at least 22 dead and over 100 injured. According to the UN Human Rights Office on May 29, 2025, mounting pressure forced President Rajoelina to dismiss his government, promise a cabinet reshuffle, and initiate a national dialogue. However, these promises failed to calm the public, who viewed them as cosmetic moves that did not address the root causes of the crisis. The situation reached a climax in early October 2025, when several elite army units, including the Special Cat Forces, sided with the protesters. The Guardian reported on October 11th that soldiers left their barracks to march with civilians and called for the president's resignation. Tensions escalated nationwide as top officials were accused of corruption and embezzlement. On October 12th, Reuters quoted a presidential spokesperson warning of an ongoing coup plot, though no evidence was provided. The same day, President Rajoelina announced that he had left the capital for safety as clashes loomed between loyalists and rebel forces. AP News noted that this was the most severe political crisis since 2009. International reactions came swiftly. The African Union urged restraint and dialogue. The United Nations expressed deep concern over the humanitarian situation in Antananarivo's poor neighborhoods, where thousands fled their homes in fear of escalating violence. International human rights groups condemned the excessive use of force and called for an independent investigation. In Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron expressed deep concern over the turmoil in Madagascar, a former French colony, but declined to confirm reports that France had assisted in evacuating Rajoelina. "I will not confirm anything today. We simply express our deep concern," Macron said at an international conference in Egypt on October 13th. Across Africa, Madagascar had long been considered a nation with strong development potential thanks to its rich natural resources and strategic location in the Indian Ocean. Yet poor governance, corruption, and social inequality have plunged the country into instability. So Global observed that the current protests are not merely about power or water shortages, but the eruption of decades of injustice and poverty. Meanwhile, young Malagasy citizens continue to march, carrying handwritten banners in Malagasy and French demanding justice, transparency, and the right to a decent life. Each passing day, the demonstrations grow larger, reflecting a generation's determination to not remain silent. The political system itself is at the heart of Madagascar's turmoil. Though officially a semi-presidential republic, the country's power structure over the past decade has been distorted, concentrating authority in the hands of the president and weakening institutional checks and balances. Under the 2010 constitution, Madagascar's system resembles that of France. The president, elected by popular vote, appoints the prime minister and exerts deep influence over the military, judiciary, and foreign policy. In theory, Parliament is meant to oversee and balance executive power, but in practice, most legislators are beholden to the ruling coalition, rendering Parliament largely symbolic rather than a true counterweight. This concentration of power has left Madagascar trapped in a cycle of political crises. Since 2009, when Rajoelina, then in his early 30s, led the uprising that ousted President Marc Ravalomanana, political and military authority have been closely tied to his personal network. After returning to power legally in 2019, Rajoelina consolidated control by appointing loyalists to key government and state enterprise positions. Thus, when basic public services such as electricity, water, healthcare, and infrastructure collapsed in 2025, citizens lost faith in the government's competence or sincerity to fix the problems. The weakness of institutions was also evident in the lack of judicial independence and the fragility of oversight bodies. According to Transparency International's 2024 report, Madagascar ranked 136th out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perceptions Index. Massive budget losses, embezzled public projects, and nepotism within the cabinet eroded public trust. When the energy and water crises erupted, this lack of transparency became the spark that ignited mass unrest. In a system where citizens lack effective channels for dialogue, protests became the only means of expression. The media is tightly controlled, civil society organizations operate under restrictions, and courts often avoid cases involving high-ranking officials. This has created a repressive environment where dissent is seen as a threat to public order. Moreover, Madagascar's semi-presidential framework proved too rigid to manage the crisis. As the president lost legitimacy, Parliament lacked independence to hold him accountable, and the prime minister, though nominally head of government, was merely an executor of presidential orders. The result was a paralyzed executive apparatus. No one had the authority or credibility to negotiate with the protesters. In this power vacuum, the military emerged as the decisive force. With a history of coups, Madagascar's armed forces have long acted as arbitrators between rival political factions. When the 2015 unrest escalated, parts of the army, especially the CAT Special Forces, openly sided with the protesters. This not only revealed divisions within the military, but also underscored that the state had lost control over its own instruments of power. The semi-presidential system itself did not fail because of its structure, but because it operated in an environment lacking transparency, accountability, and institutional integrity. When power is concentrated in a small elite again in the future.